Welcome to Strange Truths and Tall Tales, the Product of Newfoundland podcast. I'm Robert, your host and guide through the tangly, timeless, and sometimes terrifying tales that make Newfoundland what it is. It's October, the month when the veil thins, when the fog creeps over the harbor, and when the spooky old stories start to feel maybe a little too close for comfort. Tonight, we're diving into the eerie world of Newfoundland's death omens, the strange signs and warnings that once foretold disaster, sickness, and death. If you're the superstitious sort, fair warning, you might start noticing things you wish you hadn't, because around here, the signs of your own demise could be anywhere. So settle in, dim the lights, and let's talk divining death the old-fashioned way. You're traveling through the fog, and just ahead is an island of mystery, mayhem, and myth. Your next stop, Newfoundland. And these are its strange truths and tall tales. As usual, I'm going to start with a story. This tale was inspired by an account from St. Lawrence on Newfoundland's Burin Peninsula. It was printed in P.J. Kinsilla's 1919 book, Some Superstitions and Traditions of Newfoundland. It's a great old book with lots of short pieces, almost fragments of stories. There's not a lot of detail, and there's plenty of room to let your imagination run. This tale describes what the old folks would have called a corpse candle. Kinsella said he heard about it from a local man, someone who swore the strange event had happened only a short time before. His account was pretty short on details, so I fleshed it out a bit. This is it. This is the story of a man, his son, and a strange flickering light that appeared one morning. Here it is, the tale of Jacob and the corpse candle. It was early. The sun was barely over the horizon, and the sky over St. Lawrence was ominously pink. Tom McGraw looked from his kitchen window. Beyond the churchyard, he could see a dark smudge of cloud forming on the horizon. Tom shook his head. It wasn't going to be a good day. Upstairs, his 12-year-old son Jacob slept. The boy was getting older, almost, but not quite, a young man. Once upon a time, he'd have been downstairs as soon as he'd heard Tom stirring. But these days, he was clinging to the bed longer. Everything changes, Tom sighed to himself. There'd been too much change in the tiny salt box already. Barely a year had passed since Tom's father had died. For a long time, it had been 3 generations of McGraw men, grandfather, father, and son, under one roof, living together and working together. Now, his father was gone, buried in the churchyard just down the path. Through the window, his eyes followed a slow line from the church cross to the cemetery below. He could just about make out the old man's grave. This last year had been hard. Jacob had helped where he could, but he couldn't do the work of a grown man, and besides, there was school. Tom needed the boy to get an education. So Tom picked up the slack, doing the work of 2 men as best he could. And it wasn't just that. His father had been like a rock in his life, a steadfast guide. He'd helped him through so much, the death of his own mother and the death of his young bride. Life had always been hard, but life without him felt immeasurably worse. Tom slowly exhaled and closed his eyes. He'd get through it somehow, he supposed. Perhaps he could, but before he could finish his thought, a sound caught his attention. There was motion upstairs. The boards were creaking as though someone was moving from one room to another. What could Jacob be doing, he thought. He called out, but there was no reply. Tom went upstairs. It was always shadowy on the second floor of the old house. He should have taken a lamp. In these early hours, there was barely enough light to see. He peeked into Jacob's room. His quilts were twisted and pushed to the foot of the bed, but the boy was still asleep. His breaths were slow and regular. Behind him, the floor creaked again. The sound was coming from inside his father's old room. Tom froze. The room had been shut up for almost a year now. After his father died, he didn't want to face the emptiness. But now, someone or something was moving around inside. Tom reached for the doorknob. His heart quickened. He had to look inside, but everything inside him told him to turn away, that he didn't want to see what lay beyond that door. He swallowed hard and turned the knob. A rush of cold, stale air swept past him as he stepped over the threshold. If something had been moving around, there was no sign of it now. Things were just as he remembered. Even now, a year later, the smell of his father's pipe smoke seemed to linger in the air. Tom closed his eyes and breathed it in for a moment. The last years seemed to fade away. The grief, the worry, and the pain were gone, swallowed by a beautiful golden glow. He opened his eyes and the shadows returned. Closing the door, he returned to the hallway. He was sure he'd heard movement. He'd have staked his life on it. As if on cue, the noise started again, this time from the staircase. One creak, then another, slow and deliberate, like the weight of a man descending. "Jacob?" Tom called. Though he already knew it wasn't the boy, the steps were heavier, older. He rushed to the banister and froze. There was no one on the stairs. Instead, hovering halfway down, was a small, flickering flame. It looked for all the world as though a candle were burning in mid-air, except there was no candle, no wax, no wick, only a golden flame, steady and sure, moving slowly toward the bottom of the stairs. Tom flew after it, following it through the kitchen to the porch where it passed through the closed door. From the window, he watched the light drift down the path toward the cemetery through the gate until it faded in the early morning light. He'd never seen anything like it. Tom returned to the kitchen. He felt cold. He paced back and forth in front of the stove, his heart racing. He had to do something normal. He reached for his pipe, packed the tobacco, and struck a match. But the flame trembled in his hand. He let it die and set them aside. The events of the morning left him unsettled. He rubbed his temples. He didn't know what to make of it, of any of it. By the time Jacob came downstairs, the kitchen was bathed in sun. The boy squinted, raised his hand to his eyes, and fell back on a kitchen chair, his back to the window. "It's too bright," he muttered. Tom glanced toward the window. The sun was soft, no harsher than any other morning. He poured 2 cups of tea, picked up a crusty heel of bread, broke it, and set half before the boy. He thought about telling Jacob about the light, asking him if he'd seen or heard anything unusual in the night. He turned the words on his tongue, trying to find the right way to broach it. "Did you—" He stopped. The boy was carefully pouring the tea from his cup into the saucer. He looked so young. Suddenly, Tom didn't burden him with such strange stories, so instead he said, "You'll need to fill the lamps after school and trim the wicks." Jacob nodded with a quick boyish smile. He seemed happy, unencumbered with worries, with the weight of adulthood. Remember him like this, Tom thought. Time, it goes by too quickly. As the boy left for school, Tom stood at the window watching him go slowly down the path, past the churchyard gate, where the light had vanished earlier that morning. He didn't understand the impulse, but for a moment he nearly called after him, asked him to come back. He let the idea pass, turning to work instead. There were nets to mend, but his hands were sluggish and his mind was elsewhere. Before long, frustration set in and he tossed it aside. He wandered to the stage door and looked up at the house, at his father's bedroom window. A year ago, before his father died, he could have spoken of it, the footsteps. The old man would have listened. But now there was no one. From the corner of his eye, he caught movement. Jacob was coming slowly down the path toward the house. He shouldn't have been home yet. School wasn't over. Tom hurried to meet him. "Teacher sent me home," he whispered. "My neck, my head," he grimaced, "some wonderful pain." Tom put his hand to the boy's head. He was burning up. He scooped the boy into his arms and carried him into the house, through the porch and the kitchen, up the creaking stairs to the cool dark of his room. The doctor came, but offered little hope. The fever would have to run its course. By nightfall, only a single candle burned on Jacob's dresser. The bright glow of the oil lamp was too much for his eyes. Tom sat beside him, holding a pan of cool water, wringing cloths and placing them on his son's little body. The boy was lost in a delirium, drifting between his sick bed and some shadowy dream. Tom was convinced that every rise and fall of his chest would be the last. He remembered his father's passing and the horrible realization that the end was near. He felt it now, too. He would never survive this. Jacob was his boy, all that he had left. Life shouldn't go on without him. Tom leaned forward, his head in his hands. He wanted to pray, but the words caught in his throat. Instead he cried. If there was mercy in heaven, he couldn't see it. Lost in his grief, Tom didn't hear the floorboards creak outside, or feel the chill that slipped through the room. Jacob's chest lifted once, twice. Then slowly his eyes opened. His gaze was clear and present, fixed first on his father, then on something just beyond his shoulder. "It's all right, Dad," he whispered. "Papa's here. He knows the way, and I'm not afraid anymore." The candle on the dresser flared, bathing the room in a soft golden hue, and for a moment Tom felt the house was whole again. Then the light dimmed, and the boy was gone. Through the window, the first thin fingers of the morning crept above the horizon. In a minute, they would reach the churchyard, the place he would now bury his son, beside his father, the man who would come back to light the way. With the soft flicker of a flame, the dead had come for the dying. A grandfather had led his grandson home. Tom looked toward the dresser, at the candle, and felt it, the kind of love that, even after death, could never let go. I'm sort of proud of that story. Whenever I write stories for the blog or podcast, I find myself setting them in places I know. That one was definitely set in my grandparents' house. And when Jacob talked about having a wonderful pain, that was inspired by my grandfather, who always had wonderful headaches. I always liked the turn of phrase, the idea of something being so bad it was a wonder. I don't know. Anyway, the phenomenon of the flickering light in the story would once have been known as a corpse candle or corpse light. They were said to be the spirits of dead family members who appeared as small flickering flames drifting from the graveyard. They were seen as guiding the spirits of their relatives to the world beyond. Seeing one was a warning that someone nearby was about to die, and that the dead had come to lead them home. Creepy? Yes. But there's something kind of beautiful about it too, I think. The idea of family watching over you, there to help you, even from beyond. Now, corpse candles weren't the only death omen talked about in Newfoundland. There are plenty more, each one stranger, sadder, or more eerie than the last. Let's start with the fetch, for instance. People once believed that before or right after a person died, a ghostly version of them might appear, a sort of spirit double. It was said to be a messenger communicating death. And every now and then someone would claim to see their own fetch, which honestly sounds less like a prophecy and more like a cause of death all on its own. I was just reading Tom Dawes' An Old Man's Winter Night. It's a phenomenal collection of Newfoundland ghost stories, many inspired by tales he'd heard over the years. I think some of the ghosts he described could definitely fit under the heading of fetch. Truthfully, I wasn't really reading the book. I listened to it, the audio version, while I was driving. It made my travels through the beautiful fall colors of central Newfoundland feel appropriately Halloweenish. I definitely recommend it to anyone. I'll drop a link in the episode page. Back to the supernatural harbingers of death. There's another one called the Bibe. Unlike the fetch, this is not one I grew up hearing about. And hearing might be the operative word here, because the Bibe wasn't often seen. It was generally just heard. It was a noise, a soft sobbing or wailing in the night. It supposedly foretold the death of a family member. Some people believe the noise came from a ghostly woman, and I think it's impossible not to think of the Irish banshee when you hear that. That said, some people believe the Bibe wasn't anything like that at all. They said the haunting noise came from some sort of bird. I mean, they still thought it foretold death, so I don't know that that's any better, really. Other animals could sense death too. A dog howling outside a house, that was a particularly bad sign. In the same book where he discussed corpse candles, P.J. Kinsella wrote, "I myself know of a case where exactly 1 week before a neighbor died, a big Newfoundland dog and stranger to the place came and lay quite docile on the family doorstep for the whole period. At night, the animal would cry, quite pitifully. Shortly after the death of the man, the dog disappeared from the house and the vicinity." Creepy, and not subtle. I mean, it's bad enough you're dying, but dying and having to listen to dogs howl on the doorstep? Well, that seems a step too far to me. But not every omen was so obvious and otherworldly. Some were hidden in the mundane, day-to-day activities of life. For generations, Newfoundlanders baked their own bread, big 3-bun loaves in deep tins. And if one baked up with a large bubble in it, a sort of hollow pocket inside, it wasn't just considered a poor loaf. It was interpreted as the beginning of the end. People said the bubble was an open grave, a sure sign that someone close to you would soon be gone. Not exactly the kind of message you want with your morning toast. Bread was connected to death in other ways too. When someone was lost at sea, a loaf with a candle stuck in it would be set adrift near the spot. It was said to float straight to the place where the body lay. That one kind of gives me chills. I mean, bread candling for bodies? I don't know. It's one of the most eerie traditions I think I've ever come across. And the omens don't stop there. A faint ticking noise coming from inside a wall was called a death clock, and it was the sound of life slowly winding down. In truth, it was probably some sort of bug, and I think people likely knew that, but hearing it was still considered a sign of death all the same. And another one, not really an omen, I guess, but getting a new broom in the month of May was playing fast and loose with the lives of your family. There was even a rhyme about it. Buy a broom in May, sweep your family away. Right to the graveyard, I think. I think that was the idea. Even the vegetable patch could turn against you. If a cabbage leaf grew cupped like a bowl, some people said it was a death plant, and that meant someone in the family would die within a year. So, really, death omens were everywhere, in the bread, the garden, the walls of your home. Newfoundlanders once believed death almost always gave a sign. You just had to be paying attention. Which sounds a bit poetic, but it must have been terrible for the worriers. You'd never get a decent night's sleep for fear that every barking dog was plotting against you, or wondering if that flickering light outside your window was a lantern, or maybe just a long-dead great-uncle dropping by to collect you. Thank you for tuning in to Strange Truths and Tall Tales, the Product of Newfoundland podcast. If you like this kind of thing, consider subscribing. There's no shortage of stories to tell. I guess I should point out, for those only listening, you can now watch me tell these stories too. There are video versions available on YouTube and Spotify. To get more of this kind of thing, by which I mean fun, interesting, or weird Newfoundland stories, follow me on social media and check out my blog at productofnewfoundland.ca. Until next time, thanks for listening and have a very happy Halloween.